Welcome to the NC DWI Guy podcast, where defenders of the Constitution assemble to prepare for courtroom battle and firm owners gather to develop marketing strategies that will revolutionize the practice of criminal defense. Here's your host, the NC DWI Guy, Jake Minnick.
Hello, fellow freedom fighters, and welcome to another episode of the NC DWI Guy podcast. Today, we have a very special guest, a legal legend in North Carolina on the podcast today, Robert Reeves. Very excited to have Robert on the podcast. Robert has been practicing for more than 30 years. Obviously, Robert, you have had quite a bit of experience in the legal landscape, in the legal business and marketing end of things over more than 3 decades of work. So mostly what I wanted to talk with you about today are some of the changes that you've seen in the legal marketplace over your career, and then also kind of what you expect to see kind of coming down the road in the future. So very excited to have you on the podcast. Thank you very much for coming on and talking to us.
Well, very kind. As far as legal marketing, yeah, my goodness, it really has. Well, it never stops changing. But in the good old days, what I liked about the Yellow Pages days was you really only had to focus on marketing one time a year.
Right.
It was very, very expensive. It was to get a 2-page ad, what they called a double truck. It was $3,000 per book per market. So when we started out, we had the local phone book, Comporium. Back then it was Rock Hill Telephone. We had a front page or first in the book, 2-page ad, $3,000. Then Yellow Pages came along, so that required another $3,000. Then Yellow Book, so suddenly for one market you're spending $9,000 a month, which is not cheap.
Right.
You want to go into other markets, it was again those types of those price points. But you only had to make your ad once a year. Hopefully you did a good job because kind of like law school, everything makes or breaks on one exam, and in law practice, everything was made or broken on one ad. Now, when things started shifting to the internet, it was really liberating because people could outwork your competitors. So if you were first in the Yellow Pages, there's no way to break that unless somebody missed a payment or somehow dropped out of the practice of law. With the internet, there was a lot of sweat equity, and you could step over people simply by adding more content to your website versus others. Websites originally started out as basically, you put your web address on your Yellow Page ad, and it was really more of a place for clients to go to your website and learn more about you. The internet, Google search and things like that didn't start off right away. And a lot of lawyers, I think even today, still treat the website as a venue for more information. Of course, young lawyers like you and some old lawyers like me, we understand you can really step over if you put a lot of work into it. Now, it continues to evolve. And frankly, a good friend of mine and former law partner, Bennett Schiller, told me back at the beginning of the year that organic SEO was dying. And I said, well, I'm sorry to hear that. I thought that really would never occur. But he's right in the sense that even if you're on page 1, and a lot of our sites are, you're relegated to the lower third of page 1,
Right.
Which a lot of folks never get to.
Yeah. I've seen that. I've seen that pretty frequently in a lot of the markets that we're in is a real drop on the organic end of things over the past 12 months.
Oh, certainly. And Google, of course, God bless them. They continue to figure out more ways to make even more money. So Google ads have always been, in my opinion, cost prohibitive and not the best bang for buck. But if you want to go to page 1 immediately, you can do it. The Google business listings, or what we call the maps, that is currently the best available space, in my opinion, and it's currently free, but that is changing. Google's now adding ads to maps. So again, organics, the lower third, the maps are about to be monetized. And of course, the Google ads at the top are just very expensive. They're almost like the old Yellow Page days. But the new thing, and like you discovered and I discovered during the first shutdown this year for the pandemic, is social media. And the cool thing about social media is, well, it's a lot more fun. And frankly, it's currently free. A lot of folks, you can pay for ads on Facebook, I guess Instagram, but I don't think consumers really want to see a lot of ads on social media, in my
Yeah, I
opinion.
agree.
If they like you, you don't have to tell them what you do. You don't have to be in their face about personal injury or whatever it is. I think if they like you and you have a good presence, you're always in the front of their mind. So if they do have a legal need or whatever kind of consumer need, then they go, oh, I remember that good-looking Jake Minute guy. I think that's the best part of social media. You can get yourself out there, and really, it's just more sweat equity, like what we're doing today.
Yeah, I think there's a ton to unpack in kind of that framework that you've just laid out. I guess kind of going back to the Yellow Pages end of things. When you started, how many years were you out of law school before you opened your own practice?
Let's see. I started out as an insurance defense lawyer for, I guess, 7 years.
Okay.
So I started my practice with Bennett Schiller and Michael Atwater in 1996.
And how did you know them? What was the relationship there when you started that?
Well, Bennett was a very impressive young man. He was a Citadel grad, number 2 in his class, and he was a fighter. And I liked him. I had some cases against him, and I just grew to like him personally. And then Mike Atwater was a litigator with a firm that I also liked a great deal. And so we just decided, you know what, let's put this together. We had similar personalities. We were relatively young, and we were all alphas. So
I like that. Now, when you guys started the practice and kind of decided to get into Yellow Page advertising, how quickly did you make that jump? Was that pretty much immediate? Was it a couple of years before you concentrated on that? What did that look like?
Well, it was actually strategic. We really kind of finalized our desire to start a practice together in August of 1996, and the local phone books, and most of the phone books came out in September or October.
Okay.
And back then, it was based on alphabetical order, which is a long time ago. So hence it became Atwater, Schiller, and Reeves.
There you go. Strategic even in the name. I like it.
Yes. And so plus it was easier to say than any other combination. And so we invested the money. I think we put it all on credit cards and launched. And of course, if you were the first ad in the phone book, that was just like being first page on the internet.
Right.
So that worked very well. But we were young and we were a little anxious, of course, starting a business, but we said, well, we got nowhere but up to go. And like I said, we were all alpha males and ran really hard.
And in terms of the kind of Yellow Page setup at that point, what was the kind of saturation of ads within the attorney Yellow Book pages? Like how many, because everybody got a listing, but how many were actually doing some sort of advertising as well?
Well, the local phone book in Rock Hill, they did not, and I think even to this day, they did not do back cover ads.
Okay.
Spine ads. Now, Yellow Pages and Yellow Book, for a while there, it really kind of got silly. Lawyers
right.
at every possible connection.
Right.
Our view was you've got to go big. Simply having a quarter page ad was just, you're just going to, everybody's going to pass over your ad to go through the top ads first.
Right.
But we tried to buy premium ads. Back covers were very popular. The spine, not so much. They used to have like an index folder, in the middle. That was a good one. The most effective ad, besides the number one spot for a double page ad, were magnets. And I did front magnets through Yellow Book for many years. And frankly, I used to make the joke that the Yellow Book was the delivery vehicle for the magnet.
Right. And
that was true because people would take the magnet and throw away the phone book. Now, the last year I had a magnet, was in Charlotte, it was Yellow Book, and they had the last laugh because they were trying to protect their book from getting wet, so they wrapped it in plastic, which meant nobody even opened it to take the magnet off. So it was like a light switch, and of course that was a very expensive, mistake.
Right.
So
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, that's interesting how, just logistically in terms of delivery, that can change the whole setup of kind of the value that is being had by getting, obviously, probably what's the most expensive part of the phone book, that magnet on the cover.
most certainly, we cried that year.
I'm sure. I think that one of the things that, is, in terms of the shift from a Yellow Pages ad to, kind of current marketing, is in terms of just who is delivering the advertisement and the way that they deliver it. So when you think back about Yellow Pages advertising, and when I started practice, Yellow Pages were pretty much all but dead. There was still a lot of attorneys that were advertising in Yellow Pages, but I think it was basically the functional equivalent of that point of just throwing your money down the toilet. I mean, I don't think there was any value in 2009 of doing any type of Yellow Pages advertising. But the fact that you have one provider, whoever is designing and creating and selling ads, being kind of the ad organizer for every firm, that is something that I've seen and saw more frequently at the beginning of my practice, in terms of, companies that kind of saw the death of Yellow Pages and said, okay, well, we're going to go now into web design. And so they would create a website that was basically, the same for this firm as for this firm, and basically, here's our new kind of model of advertising, of just kind of creating this cookie cutter, website that, our whole goal is just to kind of be able to sell to the attorney. And I think the Yellow Pages was really, in terms of trying to separate yourself from everybody else, it's somewhat difficult because you're competing on a single platform where the company that controls the platform, Yellow Pages, is trying to get as many attorneys to buy ads as possible. So it's strange that your own kind of marketing expert, who is Yellow Pages, is directly competing against you with these other attorneys, trying to get them to buy into the ads as well. And again, I think moving from Yellow Pages into the initial web space, there was a very similar model for companies that said, okay, Yellow Pages is dead, web is where it's at. Let's figure out a way to kind of design on this large scale basis a way for firms to come in, buy a website, and then we just make identical looking websites, with different color schemes and layout. But effectively, it's the same type of model.
It is. It's hard to distinguish yourself, whether it was the Yellow Page ads or certainly on the web. But, the big thing is, and again, I've found over my career that most lawyers, I'd say 95% of lawyers, are not very good at business. They still view advertising as a necessary evil. So, for example, in the York County market, when Bennett and Mike and I were in practice, we were up to $81,000 a year for one market, which is very intimidating to most folks.
Right.
Now it worked very well, because that was the only way to be in front of folks, other than word of mouth referrals, which I just don't know if it ever really worked as well as people seem to think it does.
Right.
The old-fashioned traditional way of doing business, and certainly you get your very best referrals that way, but you won't be able to do very well if that's your primary mode of advertising.
Right. Yeah. I think the big value of referrals to me is when you create a client that you do great work for. So, just kind of, above and beyond what they were expecting coming in, those clients to me are our best salespeople, is the ones that we've really wowed in terms of the client experience. If you do a decent job or a good job clients are, paying you a large chunk of change if it is a criminal charge, if it's a personal injury case, a good amount of what would have been coming to them is going to the attorney. So they kind of expect you to do a bang up job from the outset. Otherwise they wouldn't have hired you to do it. So when you just kind of do good work, then, person will be satisfied, but they're not going to go sing your praises from the rooftops. It's when you've kind of done that wow client experience that, those people tend to be, the best voice of advocacy for the firm. But I agree. I think that just kind of going around, to different spaces, in terms of DWI practice, going around to alcohol assessors, and going around to, interlock providers, whatever it might be. My theory for a while was just try to touch as many people as possible. So I'd go around, drop off a business card, drop off a brochure, but then never really have any meaningful follow-up. And you can't build a connection through that kind of one-time presence. There's no incentive for somebody to refer you cases just because you 3 years ago stopped off with a stack of business cards and asked for business.
Exactly. I understand. It's all about consistency.
Yeah. In terms of some of the, kind of changes that you've seen in the marketplace from a website of things, what have been, some of the different developments that you've seen since kind of starting your web presence? Do you remember about what year it was that you kind of first started an online presence?
Well, when and lawyers tend to go their own way, so Bennett is still a very close friend of mine, dear friend, love him to death. Mike Atwater, I think he's partially in law and partially in business.
Okay.
But I guess we all went on our own 2006.
Okay.
And Bennett was the most. He was the most in tune with marketing. So he got a website through FindLaw in 2006. I was 9 months behind 2007. We all started out with FindLaw, and they were expensive. I was not a big fan. The website looked great, but all the content, which was very, very minimal, belonged to FindLaw.
Right.
So I left them after the contract. It was a 3-year contract after that ended.
Anytime you have a company, because I did this with the first web company that I worked with. Anytime you have a company that wants you to buy in to their website that only takes them a day and a half to make, but they want you to stay committed for 3 years is a bad sign.
It is. And that was the standard back then.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, definitely it was.
But we took the web domain, and then I hired a independent developer in Columbia, South Carolina, and he set it up. And then we discovered, now back then I would write a lot of content because I liked what I wrote, and he would add it to the website. And then of course we came along WordPress. And so then we started branching out into multiple web domains. And that went very, very well. But I would add content through WordPress on weekends for a couple of reasons. A, I enjoyed it. It was the equivalent of podcasts back then.
Right, exactly.
And also I could outwork my competitors.
Right.
But my favorite story of the power of the internet was when I wanted to break into the Charlotte DWI market, because that's a pretty big nut to crack.
Big market, yeah, right.
So I get calls just like everybody else, and some calls are good and some calls are not. Most are kind of a waste. But I got a call from a company out of Seattle, Washington, and they were selling seasoned domains, and they had a fairly long list, and one of them was Charlotte DWI Attorney. And that domain, they said it had been used, it had been seasoned, and they said it was in a bidding process, which I'm sure was BS.
Right.
So I said, what's the latest quote bid? And they said $2,000, which I'm sure was also BS. So I said, well, I'll pay $2,500 right now, which of course they jumped on. Then I took it to my web developer in Columbia, and he built a site for me. And I started adding content, and that site burst onto page 1 in Charlotte in about 45 days.
Right.
And it was not Black Hat. it was just because it was a seasoned site and it had good content. And that site, definitely did very, very well for a number of years. Now, my favorite story, and I'll leave their name out of it, but there was a firm here in Charlotte that had charlottedwi.com, and they were the leaders. And I'm sure you remember which firm that was.
Right.
But something happened with that site, and they got blacklisted immediately, just shut down, and out of that business. Fortunately, they were smart lawyers and they were diversified. But if you engage in black hat, you can get bad things can happen. It happened to J.C. Penney, so you've got to be aware of that. But then I took a couple of other sites. I noticed that anything with Charlotte was taken for obvious reasons, but Mecklenburg was not. And in Google's eyes, Mecklenburg defaults to Charlotte.
Right.
So I bought a site called mecklenburgdwi.com. And I built that one from scratch. It went through the sandbox, where Google doesn't allow you just to pump a lot of material onto it. And then that started hitting page one for a little while, we had pages, our page one sites, we had Charlotte DWI Attorney, Mecklenburg DWI. We were on the map. So obviously I was very popular with my competitors. Right. But it just if you just are willing to work, people would ask me, lawyers would come up and say, well, how do you get on page one? And I say, well, what did you do this weekend? What did you do? I played. Right. And so, I was writing content. And so,
that's huge. I think that mindset shift of just knowing this is what is going to have to happen in order to, kind of outwork the competition. Yeah. That is definitely a mindset shift. And I think that there's also a mindset that, again, in terms of just not everybody being clued in on the business end of things, there's a specific mindset that goes into just taking calculated risks, or sometimes maybe even just gut feeling risks with regards to marketing opportunities. I've had a lot of marketing opportunities that I jumped on that were a complete waste of time and energy, complete waste of money. But if you're not kind of used to just jumping in and trying something, then I think it's so much more difficult to ever land those great chances, because there's probably 10 other attorneys that company in Seattle called before you saying, hey, we've got this seasoned domain name. The last bid is $2,000. And either A, they couldn't get through to the attorney, or B, it was just a click on the other end of the line, just where, not interested.
Don't take calls, which is it's good for us. Right. But again, 9 out of 10 calls probably are not, but it's an opportunity. Right. Another one of my favorite stories, I got a call from a company out of Fort Lauderdale. I'm trying to think of the name, but Surf Links. And they're a fantastic company, and they cold called, and they were offering flat rate pay-per-click campaigns for Charlotte and other markets. And out of the phrases that they had available, out of 5 phrases, 3 were really good for DWI clients. Right. But they offered flat rate, which was I think about $1,400 a month, and pay-per-click, open-ended. You can spend whatever amount you want. Right. And so I took the chance, and I used them for years. They were fantastic, and I still recommend them. But I was getting, any number of clicks, mostly vendors, like most pay-per-click campaigns have, tire kickers. But at $1,400, my costs were contained, and I was still up there at page one. Right. And so, you just never know. If you don't take the call, then you can miss out.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think, even in terms of at that time when you were kind of getting into some of these domain name type, building a website, around a specific domain name, there was a ton of value in doing that for a pretty long period of time with Google. And there's still a lot of value in domain names at this point. But I think in terms of kind of a different mindset than having, FindLaw build your website. When you own the domain name and you're able to put your own content up there, there's almost an immediate kind of click of, okay, well, now I have the freedom to kind of develop this, this website as much as I want to and keep the sweat equity that I'm pouring into it versus, if I stop paying my monthly amount at the end of 3 years, everything that I put onto the website is just gone. So kind of in similar fashion, when we started out, the first company that I started with was Yodel. I think that they had a local office in Charlotte. So they built the website, but I purchased the Minic Law domain name and basically just made very clear at the outset with them, because they wanted a 2-year contract as well. I made very clear, like when, if ever down the road, I kind of walk away from this, I'm going to keep possession of the domain name. I realize that any content that you all create is going to be, kept on your side of, things that I won't be able to kind of have access to the content that's already been created, but I want to, keep the domain name. And I think that even in terms of just long-term looking at that thinking, again, as soon as you stop paying one of these companies the monthly fee that they're requiring, that web presence is just gone. Whether you're on first page, top listing, or you've got multiple listings, if you don't own the web presence, then it's just gone. Same thing with, Google ads currently. I mean, that's one of the beautiful things about it, because you can hit page one within, a week if you put your ads up there. But as soon as you stop paying those fees, you're off of page one as well. So I definitely think that idea of, okay, I'm going to buy a domain name that is specific to this location area, and then I'm going to pour the sweat equity into it. It's really difficult to even have that mentality of I'm going to spend weekends working on content until you actually own the thing that you are working on. And so that investment, I think, is definitely the mindset investment that goes into it from the moment that you actually own the domain space is a really different change in kind of marketing philosophy.
Definitely. And same thing with pay-per-click. When you first had pay-per-click, it was fairly simple. Even somebody like me could set it up, but it has gotten very complex. And so the last time I did pay-per-click, it's been several years ago, but I used a guy out of Texas, and he was $100 an hour because I didn't want to hire a company because it's just cost prohibitive, and I'm not sure what they do after the first month. But this guy gave me a lot of homework, who were my primary competitors, keywords that I wanted. And so he said, so many folks, and you'll see, you can be in a faraway city. I can be in Atlanta, and I'll want to see my presence, and I'll get local Atlanta pop-up ads, even though I'm looking for somebody in Charlotte or wherever else. Same thing, if your ad simply comes up and somebody clicks it, you get charged for it, and there's not a chance they're going to use you.
Right.
But he wanted to know who my competitors were, not to unethically, search their, keywords, but to block them, to be a negative keyword, so
right.
that if somebody's looking for Jake Minnick and Robert Reeves pops up, they don't care about Robert Reeves, they want Jake Minnick, and vice versa. So pay-per-click, again, if you're going to do it, I like people that charge me for a project by the hour.
Right.
They charge me for what I need, not some running, whatever, a monthly contract.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that is it really puts the onus on the kind of marketing agency to show their value when you do it that way versus, here's the flat rate, because then no matter how much or how little time, I mean, we've used so many different people in terms of, marketing, solo marketing, practitioners, and then, bigger agencies. But anybody that's just charging that flat monthly rate, it's just like, there's no incentive to do any additional work. Like the incentive is all on the negative end of things. Like, how can I do the least amount of work, but keep this person still paying the monthly
You
bill?
don't want your vendor earning passive income.
No, right, exactly. That's what it is too. Definitely is what it is. Well, I guess in terms of one of the biggest shifts that, I think I've seen in the kind of short term of practice on my end was really the advent of the Google what's now Google My Business, the Google local pages, Google Maps listings, and primarily because of the reviews that got associated with those local pages, and now a lot of the other kind of larger agencies, AVVO, FindLaw, all have kind of review systems where clients can leave feedback. In terms of how you have kind of worked through kind of growing reviews or requesting reviews, how has that shifted kind of any type of marketing strategy on your end of things?
Well, it's a primary goal now. People, it does amaze me, and I'm the same way. We all are the same. If I go look for a product, I want to look at the reviews.
Right.
Now, if I see, a large number of nothing but 5-star reviews, then I'm a little cynical, because
Right.
that's just not reality in America. It is amazing how many lawyers, their average rating is below 4,
Right.
3, and that will kill your business.
Right.
And a lot of folks who call me, they'll say, I called you because I saw all your, but I'll say, well, what do you know about me? And they really don't know anything.
Right.
So it's all based on reviews. Now, I use a service called Bird Eye. They allow you to send an email or a text request. Frankly, we only send text requests now, because that was 3-to-1. People prefer to text
Sure.
now, because
Yeah. And I think it's more immediate in terms of a response time from a text versus an email.
Now, it is hard to get folks to write reviews. I mean,
Yes.
there's plenty of clients that get great results, and they tell me how happy they are. And, we say, well, we're going to send you a text link, and, I'm going to send it to you in the next half an hour.
Yeah.
And
they tell you, yeah, sure, I'll do that. I'll get that posted right now.
Absolutely. And then now what I've noticed, but for those calls where either it's something that they don't need me, there's plenty of cases where they don't need to pay me a service. I'll give them the option. I'll say, for example, in a speeding ticket case, here's what I'm going to ask for. You can make your own pizza at home, or you can call Papa John's on Papa John's.
Right. Right.
Or simple possession of marijuana by a teenager.
Right.
So I'll tell them, I say, here's what I'm going to do. If you hire me, I'll give you the secret sauce. You can save the money.
Right.
And they really appreciate that. And then about a third of folks say, well, I'd just rather pay you, which is fine.
Right.
But they still appreciate, an honest answer or a candid answer or an explanation. A lot of times, those folks will say, well, what can I do for you? And I say, well, I'll tell you what, would you consider doing a review? And those are probably about 65% will do a review, which is very appreciative.
Because that's basically the only kind of exchange that's happening during that. I think that's a really powerful way to try to, first of all, help people, but secondly, to get that kind of a response. I think that I've seen less and less of this in recent years, but when I first started out, there was a lot of, I felt like, attorneys that would really try to use fear as a kind of
sales pitch.
Sales pitch, right? Exactly. And that is a really, difficult way, I think, to sell to people. It really puts the attorney-client relationship in a bad place starting out. So I think that way of kind of communicating to the client, being very open-ended, especially on those matters that somebody probably could figure out if they went to the courthouse how to handle, just kind of being open about that and saying, if you go down to the DA's office and you ask for a reduction, they're going to give you a reduction. I mean, there's no magic happening behind closed doors. I mean, this is what it's going to be. And then, when somebody does hire you, the 1 out of 3 or so that does hire you, now, they know exactly what's going to happen. And instead of being like, well, what did you do special for me? It's like, well, you did exactly what you said you were going to do. You went down, I didn't have to go to court. I didn't have to waste my time. I didn't have to be anxious about talking to anybody, figure out where I needed to be. So just being open about that, I feel like creates a lot of, trust in the relationship versus saying like, if you go handle this by yourself, I mean, a speeding ticket could carry jail time with it, right? I mean, that's that's
Right.
the mentality where it's like, come on, nobody gets jail time from a speeding ticket, and everybody knows that. So it just is not a effective means to me of
Right.
communicating and building trust.
Now we put all of our eggs into the Google basket. So if Congress breaks them up, ruh-roh. But I'm not a fan of AVVO. I'm on their service. I have the 10 that basically you can do some things, and it in my respectful view it means nothing.
That's very true. I've seen judges on there, federal judges, that have like a 4 rating, or a 5 rating.
Well, in AVVO again,
that's not possible.
No, and remember I was at a seminar and there was a DUI icon. All the really big lawyers in South Carolina are usually in Charleston because that's where you want to be. And he got up and he followed a friend, a speaker who was a 10 on AVVO, and he goes, "Yeah, I'm very impressed." He goes, "I didn't realize what a terrible lawyer I was. I'm a 4 because that's what you start out as." AVVO had some issue where they weren't on page 1 for a while, but we put everything into Google. We like Facebook stuff, but that's mostly friends who were already in the circle. But yeah, reviews are critically important. So we definitely push that as much as we can.
Yeah, it's interesting. Another kind of minor change that I've seen shift is really that directory mentality. So kind of the online yellow pages with FindLaw, AVVO, lawyers.com, like, all of those places where everybody can kind of get a listing and then you can pay to have, a more prominent listing. AVVO for a long time, for about 4 or 5 years, we got a lot of clients from AVVO. I mean, this has probably been about 8 years back or so.
Yep.
For about 4-year period, there was a lot of clients that were coming through AVVO, and that's pretty much died as well. And I think that it's because people don't trust the directory listing format as much. I don't think it's because of even the lawyer directories that actually do have a lot of kind of good resources, whether it be peer ratings, client reviews, information, videos that can be shared, blogs that can be uploaded. I just think people aren't very, trusting of the format of a directory. They kind of want to be able to go straight to the source, whether that's comparing multiple attorneys' websites or looking at, the ratings on the Google My Business platform. So I just don't see there being near as much value in that directory format. I use AVVO to go find other attorneys, but other than that, it's not something that is a ranking system that works very well.
Well, there's so many, like FindLaw. Again, you're basically buying a very expensive backlink. So I'm not in FindLaw.
Right.
Justia, I like Justia. I think they're a very good value.
Right.
And we've gotten good returns. I agree with you. AVVO used to get a lot more clients from that, but it's just something I'm not sure what I'm getting. There's just so many. Same thing with these.
I think also on the AVVO front, you used to be able to ask questions, right? And you still can. You can ask questions on there. But I think with long tail keywords in a Google search, you're getting the same answer without kind of going through that search directory, but you're kind of going to a specific attorney website versus kind of, having your question thrown out there in a pool. So I think that Q&A model was actually a really healthy thing for a lot of these legal directory sites to try to use for a bit. But now with long tail key searching, it's just so easy to plug it into the Google search bar and boom, you got five, 6 answers, videos that pop up that are specific to your question.
Well, AVVO was brilliant because all this question and answering was just putting lots and lots of fresh content on their site. So you're just boosting their organic presence.
Right.
And but yeah, I never liked the shakedown. Your name appears with a 4, so you're kind of roped into trying to improve that.
Right,
So I
right.
never really liked that kind of shakedown process. But the good news is now, I mean, like there's so many things you can join. You know, I was a super lawyer, which again means nothing. It just means you wrote a check for it. You know, the National Trial Lawyers, I joined that because it was kind of cool, but more importantly, they have an annual conference in South Beach. So I joined that for that. $1 Million Advocates, you know, you actually have to do something. My biggest case was the result of a case that I associated a very fine lawyer, Michael Goldberg, out of Atlanta. You know, the hardest thing I think these days for lawyers to do is to distinguish themselves. We all say the same thing: 30 years experience, you know, hundreds or thousands of cases. We all belong to the same groups. It's kind of boring.
Right. It is boring.
So I think what now separates one lawyer from the other is video and personality. And some lawyers probably should not make videos because they really don't have a personality. But nobody really wants to write anymore because that takes a lot of structure. Very few people really want to read a lot. Video is just easier. And so that's where, again, you've got to have a good website, some good content, but video rules.
Right. Yeah. And I think that you've executed this really well. I mean, something that I have just following you on Facebook and on LinkedIn. You know, you give really helpful legal advice in 3 minutes. So, you know, it's short videos. You know, here's the tip of the day. And then you also have a good mixture in that as well of just kind of who you are as a person, you know, throwing the steaks on the grill and feeding the dogs and, you know, loving on the dogs, you know, content on Waffle House and things going on in the culture. And I think that really helps create a personality that then allows for people that are kind of interested in following that content to also kind of say, well, hey, this would be kind of interesting to know the answer to, you know, am I required to blow on a breath test? You know, I've seen a couple of Robert's videos. They're entertaining. So maybe I'll just kind of check into this. And so you start to build an audience. So I think that you've done a great job.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, it's really, really impressive. And it takes commitment.
I've enjoyed your podcast as well. No question. Well, what's interesting, like in Facebook, if it involves alcohol, steak, over chicken, any kind of dog picture, my German Shepherd Goose, he's very popular. But yeah, my biggest ones, I had a picture of some boiled peanuts with a Miller Lite can in the background.
Right.
I think I got the highest number of anything with the German Shepherd. But yeah, those are fun. Those are fun. Of course, Waffle House, all your favorites. Yeah, you don't want to be, in my respectful opinion, you know, I got out of cable TV because of all those cheesy lawyer ads.
Yeah.
I mean, for so many reasons, cost, but you know, it was embarrassing to see just back-to-back lawyer ads. And now billboards have become the yellow pages where every billboard is some, you know, ham and cheese lawyer up there trying to turn something as serious as personal injury litigation into a lottery game.
Right.
It spoils juries. It spoils the image, in my opinion, of lawyers who do have self-respect. But the video stuff is entertaining. I like it. You know, we set up a YouTube channel and we put up, I guess, about 90 videos, and we're adding to it a lot, but it's trying to be helpful. Now, you probably know of a guy named Andy Stickle.
Yes. Yep.
I love his videos.
Yeah, he's got great videos.
He does, and he has a great service. I'm just a little too cheap, but I do enjoy him. I'm a big fan. I sponsor him anywhere I can. But he gives great, you know, content for video advice, and so a lot of the things that I do are based on, you know, his training and his videos. But you know, you just want to give value. You don't want to have, you know, you want to be constantly annoying somebody. Hire me. If you give good content, if you're down to earth, I think people relate to that much more than some stiff lawyer. You know, I wear a bow tie when I go to court, but I think it kind of puts people off, in the general sense. Some think it's nice and some think it's don't. So
Right.
my videos are very casual. We did switch from the Jeep and t-shirts to, a button down shirt, upstairs at my home in Anderson. But natural light, good sound, those are the good things. Now, crisp video, I'm a big fan. They make fantastic videos. They're
Yeah, they
rather
do.
expensive. So again, I'm too cheap. But I did the research, and if it's too cheesy, if it's bad sound, bad light, people don't respond to that. If it's too slick, they also don't like that either. So somewhere in the middle, like your videos are fantastic, your podcasts are fantastic. You're very handsome. I'm not flirting with you, but you are. It helps. And you're very down to earth. You're very relatable to people. So that's why you're going to do so well, and I'm sure you are doing so well in the newest medium.
Well, I appreciate that, Robert. And I think that it is I think for social media in particular, anything that comes across as stiff or slick is just going to be viewed as an advertisement, even if it is a really great advertisement. And that's not
Right.
what people are on there to look at. They're on there to kind of interact with another human being. And so the more that you can be that relatable person, I think the better chance that you have in terms of being able to actually hold that person's attention.
Sure.
Well, why don't we kind of maybe end, I guess, with this question, Robert? You kind of already talked about the kind of the future of the legal market being maybe less geared towards kind of SEO and organic content. So that maybe being a change coming down the pike. And I agree with you. I think that there is definitely Google wants to make its money. And so that is not necessarily the, just kind of promoting the best content, in some extent to some sense is in their best interest, but to some extent it's not in their best kind of financial interest. What other kind of changes do you see coming down the pike in terms of the legal marketing space?
I think everything is going to continue to shift to remote. I know clients, a lot of them will call wanting to come in and meet and
Right.
say, well, in fairness, we can talk right now.
Right.
You don't have to schedule, you don't have to come down. And frankly, I'm out of the office a lot.
Right.
And they just want answers.
Right.
And they don't necessarily want to wait for it. I think the days of charging consult fees I don't. If you want an hour of my time for a general overview of something, then yes, I will charge you for that. But
Right.
if you just want specific answers to questions, I'm happy to help you, because that might turn into a case, and if not, it might turn into a review.
Right.
But I think remote is going to be the norm. I'm glad that the real estate that I bought are one bedroom or condos and small office condos, because the old days of having buildings, my friends that do commercial real estate, they're all saying there's about to be a dump onto the market, because companies have figured out we can work remotely. Employees really enjoy it because they get to work from home. Our own firm, we have electronic retainers for everything that we do. So, that's going to be more of the norm, less in the office. And again, I think, as more lawyers figure out social media, but I don't think they'll do well with it, because it does take, you have to swallow a little bit of pride, and risk it. Your people are always afraid of being laughed at. Videos, of course, that's a permanent something to giggle at. But if you're able to get past it and be relatable on video, not everybody will be able to do that.
I agree.
So
yeah.
I think that the competition will still be less than 10% of the market for lawyers or anything else, but certainly for lawyers.
Yeah, I agree. And just to kind of piggyback off of that thought, I think in terms of, having a personality, it's basically just your kind of personal, but also your business brand. And that's, I think, where the future of marketing, in terms of just the social media end of things is heading, because, I think we are now getting to a place online where the Yellow Pages was at the point that it kind of just died, which is literally every person gets a listing. You've got hundreds of attorneys that are in there. You've got 50 ads that all kind of start to look the same. So, there's just no way to differentiate yourself. And organic, I think, is dying in some degree because of the numbers of people that now have a website. When we first started the website in 2010, there wasn't a lot of criminal defense lawyers in Asheville that had a website, or at least had a website that was anything more than just a one-page brochure of their firm. Now you're going to have 60, 70 attorneys in your market, in your practice area, that all have basically, a good looking website that, is designed by an SEO expert that is putting all the right search terminology into it. So in terms of differentiating yourself, it becomes increasingly difficult to do that without having that kind of personal brand, where instead of, like you said, somebody trying to search for, well, I want a DWI attorney in Charlotte, I want Robert Reeves because I like his videos. I like who he is. I like the way that he communicates to people. It seems like he's easy to talk to. He's likable. He'll drink a beer. It's that kind of mentality that a client is, I think, going to be looking increasingly for, because otherwise you're just the same as everybody else that's on the internet, just like you were the same as everybody else in the yellow pages.
True. Very true. Very true.
Well, I appreciate very much, Robert, you coming on the podcast and sharing your wisdom that you have built through many, many years of practice. It's been a real joy speaking with you, and thank you so much for coming on and talking to us.
Very kind to have me, and always good to see you, Jake.
Thanks, Robert. Hope you enjoyed today's episode of the podcast. If you did, please share the podcast with another freedom fighter in the criminal defense community, and be sure to leave us a rating on iTunes. See you next time.